this is Faith at Faith and Books. How are you doing? I am going to do a tag. I'm making this video on a Tuesday, so I hope to get it up today, and then it'll be a Tuesday tag. And I know I've been very remiss about tags. I know I've gotten tagged several times and I haven't done it, and I've lost track of them, honestly. I thought this year was going to be a great year for tags because I wasn't watching Kids Tuesday mornings, and it just didn't pan out. But I most recently, as far as I know, was tagged by Andrew, I believe his name is Andrew, at a new channel called You Could Be Reading More. He has 170 subscribers, and he tagged me, and I've watched a few of his videos, and I like him. So I'm going to do this tag. Now, this is an old tag called the Childhood Books tag, and I think it was like almost 10 years old or something. But he was, reviving. And I love this kind of tag because I am so nostalgic about the books that I read as a child. I have so many. I have books that I've kept from that time period in my life when I was a child. So I have the original books that I actually read from. I have bought used copies of books that I've read, and I've bought new copies of books that I read as a child. So this is just right up my lane. So, all right, so let me get started. So the questions are, the first one is, were you a big reader as a child? Yes, I was. If memory serves me right, I think the summer before I went to kindergarten, I turned 5 in April. And I thought that I had learned to read when I was 4, but I really think I was 5. I had just turned 5, and it was that summer before going to school. And my sister, I had turned 5 and my sister was 9. We loved playing school. And in the playroom, we called it the rec room of our house, we had sort of a area permanently set up as a school. There was a blackboard on the wall, and there was a table with little chairs, and I think we even had a couple of old discarded desks from the parochial school that we all went to across the street. And we had these old readers from like the 1940s and 1950s, and she knew her phonics rules, and she just taught me out of these readers. And so I learned to read from my 9-year-old sister playing school. And so from then on, I was a big reader. Okay, 2, did your parents read to you? If so, what? So I remember my mother reading us like picture books at bedtime, and I don't remember particular books. I just remember one time, because there were 3 of us, so there'd be, my 2 younger sisters would be on either side of her, and I would have to sit behind her on the bed and kind of kneel and lean over her shoulder to see. And I remember it wasn't a very comfortable position. But I do remember my mother reading us bedtime stories that way. And then my father read sometimes after dinner. And it wasn't an everyday thing, but sometimes for whatever reason he would read to us. So I know one, I guess it was Advent, he read A Christmas Carol to us. And at other times he would read stories from the Bible. We have this very beautiful New Jerusalem Bible that was displayed in our den, and he would read from that. And he also liked to read poetry. And I think he read more than this poem out loud to us. I think he read lots of different poems, but I especially remember The Cremation of Sam McGee, I think by Robert Service, I think is the poet's name. Anyway, I remember that one because that one was funny. So that's what I remember the parents reading. Okay. Number 3, first bookish memory. So I have a vague memory of receiving To Think That I Saw on Mulberry Street by Dr. Seuss as a child, as a gift. That's not a PC book anymore. And I remember I found it kind of, morally ambiguous, because you couldn't tell if the father wanted him to make up stories or didn't want him to make up stories. So I remember receiving that, and I remember for my 6th birthday, I got Winnie the Pooh books, because Now We Are 6 was one of the books that I got. Excuse me. Let me have a drink of water. I got something in my throat. Okay. But a really, really vivid memory was reading this book, The Wizard of Oz. This actual book, you can see how old and beat up this is. This is the front of it. So this was the actual book that I read when I was maybe 9. And I remember I think it was a weekend, and we didn't have anything to do in the afternoon. I think it was like a rainy, chilly afternoon, and I just took this book up to my room, and I laid down on my bed and I started reading it. And then I came out of it, and it wasn't even dinner time yet. Like, I read this entire book. Now it's in big print, but it's only, and there's beautiful illustrations in it. But it's 207 pages, and then, you can see there's some blank. These, I guess that's Glinda. There's Dorothy. The illustrations are great in this. But anyway, I read this in one afternoon, in one sitting. I think that's the first and one of the few times I've ever done that with a book. And it was just magical. I just couldn't believe that I had read the entire book and it wasn't even dinner time yet. So that's a very vivid childhood memory. All right, number 4, be honest. Did you read books assigned to you in school? I actually did. I tried my best. Maybe there might have been an occasional time where I didn't, but I really was one of those people that tried to get it read. Occasionally I wouldn't have enough time and I wouldn't read it as deeply as I should have, or maybe I didn't like it, so I sort of skimmed over it. But no, I really did try to read everything that was assigned to me at school. Okay, 5, where did you get your books as a child? So my house that I grew up in was a big house, and there were books everywhere. There were 2 bookcases in the living room. They had mostly adult books that, were beyond me. We had a great big floor-to-ceiling bookcase in our den, which was full of books. We had a rec room or a playroom that had, I can't remember where the books were kept in there, but I know there were books in there. Then there were like nice coffee table books in the living room that we could look through. And then upstairs in our room, everybody had a bookcase where they could keep books. And going up to the attic, there were stairs going up to the attic, and there was this shelf, this deep shelf, kind of like an alcove. And it was full of vintage books, full of books, because my family bought lots of secondhand books. And I remember finding this book on that attic shelf, Mrs. Wiggs of the Cabbage Patch. And I remember reading this as a child. This is copyright 1901. I don't know if anyone knows about this book, but I remember being really charmed by it. The first chapter is Mrs. Wiggs' Philosophy. Anyway, I won't read it, but it's a really, really charming story. I only vaguely remember it, but I do remember finding that in my house and reading it. I remember finding, not this particular book, but this book written by James Thurber. Not this particular edition. I had to buy a new one. But we had this floating around the house, and I remember reading this by James Thurber. So the house just had a lot of books, and I'll show more. There was just so many books. I had so many older sisters who had books, and then there were so many books that my parents had. And so there were just books everywhere. But also, we only lived about 8 or 9 blocks from the library. And this was back in the 60s and 70s when kids could walk 8 or 9 blocks away from their house and nobody thought anything of it. And so we used to go to the library, every week, every other week. We lived at that library. And also, right across the street from our house was the school that I went to. And every year they would have a bazaar, B-A-Z-A-A-R, to raise money. And one of the rooms in the one of the classrooms in the school would be turned into a used book room, and they just put out tables and people would donate books. And I remember loving to go through those books and find books from there. So that was another way we got books. So, all right, so the next question is, did you watch any television meant to inspire reading? Yes, so I think that I mean, this book was sitting around my house, so I could have picked it up anyway, but I'm pretty sure that I watched the Wizard of Oz movie, with Judy Garland as a little child. I remember we had to, take our baths and get in our pajamas and go down and watch the movie because they didn't have streaming movies. So you sort of planned by looking at the TV guide if you wanted to catch a movie. And that was a movie that my parents let us watch. So I remember being really scared of the flying monkeys. But that probably inspired me to pick this up, I would imagine. And I remember, I don't have it with me, but I remember reading Treasure Island after seeing the Walt Disney movie, kind of made for TV movie, I think, of Treasure Island. I remember reading that after seeing that movie. And also Walt Disney had a Swiss Family Robinson movie. And I remember, and this book was just sitting in my house. And I remember reading that after I saw the movie. So sometimes seeing the movie would inspire me. If the book was, available in my house, I would go then and read the book. So, and this, these are old vintage books. This was to my sister Leanne. It says, for Leanne, Christmas 1961 from Jackie. That's my Aunt Jackie. Yeah. So I remember really enjoying that book. So, okay, let's see. What sorts of genres or storylines did you like? So I liked a number of different types of books. I liked, I remember it was 4th grade. I really loved these Childhood of American, let's see if I can, they must have renamed them. They were called, they were reprinted in blue paperback, and they were called Childhood of American Heroes. This was the older version of it, and I think like meant for libraries. And I loved reading those books. And I think it was 4th grade, because I'm trying to remember things that happened around 4th grade. And I remember when I go to the library and get those books out. And I bought this a few years ago because I saw it at a library sale. And I had forgotten that I'd read Lotta Crabtree as a child, Gold Rush Girl. And when I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, I read that book. And so I had to get it. And I bought those Childhood of American Heroes, the paperback blue ones for my kids, some of them for my kids. And they just fell apart. They were really badly bound. They were cheap paperbacks that did not last long. But that was a great series, and I love these books. I remember reading, and it's probably 5th grade, I remember reading Johnny Tremaine and absolutely loving it. And when I homeschooled my kids, I reread this. I read this out loud to them, and I loved it just as much. As I was reading it, I was remembering it and thinking, oh wow, I loved this book as a child. This is this looks like it's gotten wet, but this was not the version that I read as a kid. I think I probably got it out of the library. Anyway, yeah, this was a good one. So I liked history and like kind of biographies, and I loved books about animals. I really loved books about animals. And this book just was in my bedroom. It was on my bedroom shelf. I don't know how it got there, but The Red Pony by John Steinbeck. And I read this over and over again as a child. They're 3 loosely related stories, and the illustrations are great. And I loved him. I loved, look, some kids scribbled on that. But yeah, so I read that. I loved books about horses. This was the actual book that I read when I read Black Beauty as a child. This also has nice, where are they? Nice kind of black and white sketches in there. And I remember loving this and rereading it. And then this is, I think I got books by Marguerite Henry out of the library, but this is Misty of Chincoteague. See the illustrations. I remember she was kind of a go-to author for me. When I would go to the library, I would look for books by her. I read many by her. And I remember being given this book, but I don't know who gave it to me, if it was one of my grandmothers or my aunt. Yeah, and I remember one Christmas in my stocking, I got these what do you call these, book labels? Yeah, so anyway, I remember reading The Jungle Book, and I enjoyed The Jungle Book, but my absolute favorite story, I remember reading The White Seal. Yeah, that was a good one. And then that's set up in the Arctic. And then, but my absolute favorite story was Rikki Tikki Tavi. I love that one so much. About a mongoose who's facing down a cobra in the garden. Set in India, of course. So, yeah, I love that. What other? Let's see, what other books did I read? So I loved animal books. Oh, yeah, let me show you some other animal books. Okay, I love this author, Jim Kjelgaard, Kjelgaard. And he wrote books that I would get out of the library about Irish setters, Big Red, Irish Red. There might have been another one. And I think it was like, you know, like a forester up in Maine or upstate New York or something, and maybe back in the 1940s. And I know there was logging going on. Anyway, that I remember loving those books, but I remember reading this one as well, Chip the Dam Builder, all about this beaver. And you know, this was the sort of book that I love to read. I love to read about animals out in the woods. And let's see, I'm trying to find an illustration. Yeah. So I remember reading this book. Oh, I loved the book Rascal, which I got out of the library. And I remember it was a hardback, and it had like a black and white beautiful sketch of a raccoon. But I love this book, and I read it several times. I love Sterling North. So this was a beloved book. Oh, and I remember my father had an old copy of this book, Gay Neck, The Story of a Pigeon, which won some kind of a prize. I can't read it in this light, but it's about a carrier pigeon in World War I, and it starts off in India, and then they go to fight. Wonderfully written story, really exotic feeling and emotional. Just beautiful, beautiful story. Highly recommend this, Gay Neck. So yeah, so those were some of the animal books I like to read. Oh, and this one. I'm pretty sure my Aunt Jackie gave me this one. See, I had the book plate. This is The Trumpet of the Swan by E.B. White. And I love Charlotte's Web, but I really love this one too. Almost maybe the same. Stuart Little was the least. I found it clever and everything, but it didn't steal my heart the way Charlotte's Web or The Trumpet of the Swan did. And I love this book. And so this is about a mute swan who learns to play the trumpet to make up for the fact that he can't honk. And oh, it's so funny and so clever and so well written. It's just beautiful. I love this book, The Trumpet of the Swan. It had a cover that got wrecked up. So, but yeah, that was another animal book that I loved. I've got this big pile here now. Yeah, I loved all those animal books about animals. And then some other authors that I remember going to the library. Oh, here's another animal one. The Cricket in Times Square. Now, this is, you know, fictional, but it's about a boy who sells newspaper in the New York subways, and he makes friends with a rat and a cat and a cricket. They're trying to get the cricket back to the country side because he got lost accidentally. So I remember loving that book too. So let me see. I'm going to tell you some of the authors that were kind of my go-to authors when I would go to the library. I loved anything by Lois Lenski. Strawberry Girl was one of them. I read a bunch of her books. Do we have a list? Like Bayou Suzette, Strawberry Girl. Don't remember Blue Ridge. Julie's Cotton in My Sack. I'm not remembering the other ones. I thought I'd read more. Anyway, I really liked Lois Lenski. And then I loved anything by Edward Eger, Half Magic. What were some of the other ones? There was a whole bunch. Magic by the Lake, The Time Garden. I don't remember the other ones so well. Magic or not, maybe I read them. But anyway, I remember really enjoying his books. And then I remember reading the Betsy Tacy books. And I kind of read these gradually. Like I read the ones where she's a teenager when I was older. And I read this, you know, as an easy chapter book when I was, I don't know, 3rd grade or something like that. Let's see, I remember reading Heidi. Oh my gosh, I loved Heidi so much. This might have also been, I saw a movie, like there was, none of the movies they made about Heidi were very good, I didn't think. But it might have been inspired to read it, because I think this was another book that was just sitting on my shelf from when my you know, from my older sisters. I'm trying to read. Oh wait, oh, yeah, here we go. So this is from my aunt. So I guess that Christmas she gave everybody books, because Christmas 1961 for my sister Ronnie from Aunt Jackie. So yeah, so I remember reading this and loving it. It's so much better than any of the movies that they made. And I remember this is kind of a contemporary groovy book, but I remember, I don't know, this might have come out when I was 11 or so. But I remember being, 1970. I remember this was like the big book. Everybody was reading Jonathan Livingston Seagull. Maybe I read it when I was a little bit older, so maybe this doesn't count quite as childhood. Maybe I was more closer to being a teen. But I remember just being really moved by it. My older sister really loved Nancy Drew, and we had a number of Nancy Drew books that were kept on that shelf as you went up to the attic. And I remember, this is a new edition. This is 2 books in one. But I remember I did read both of these. We had both of these. They were in the navy blue cover, kind of a denim looking cover. So I remember that. So I didn't read that many mysteries, but I did read a little bit of Nancy Drew. And then I went through a period where we loved these, me and my sisters and I loved these Raggedy Ann stories, because we got a Raggedy Ann doll, and then we had a Raggedy Andy doll, and we used to make up plays about them. And so we had a really old copy of this book. I don't know who it belonged to, but we had a really old copy, and I loved reading these Raggedy Ann. There's Raggedy Ann stories, there's Raggedy Andy, it's a bunch of them, but we had a very old edition of this book that I loved reading. And I don't know, I think that's about it. Where I get this book. I also went through a period where I liked books by Scott Odell. He wrote Island of the Blue Dolphin, which was a book I read and reread. But I remember reading this book too. And it's funny, again, it's like with the Lotta Crabtree book, I'd totally forgotten that I had read it as a child. And I don't know, maybe I was 5th or 6th grade, until I got it and started reading it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I remember this book. So yeah, Scott Odell was another good author. Okay, let's see where I am. Oh, here we go. Favorite children's or picture book? Oh, I forgot to get it. It's falling apart though. It's called The Bumper Book, and it's a big orange book, big oversized book, and it's a collection of these old stories, like from Victorian or around the turn of the century. I know it has Edward Lear's nonsense alphabet in it, and a bunch of Robert Louis Stevenson poems, and some A.A. Milne and Christopher Robin, and it's got the Thanksgiving squirrel is a story that's in there. I wish I had remembered, but that was my favorite. Maybe at the end of this video, I'll add on. I'm too lazy to get up and get it now, but I'll have to go find it. That's the thing. And we had it as when I was growing up in the house, and it held up well, but then I don't know what happened to it. And when my oldest kids, who are now, in their early 30s, were getting up there, to be read aloud to, I remember running across it in a bookstore, and I got it, and it fell apart within a few years. And so then I recently re-got it, meaning 5 years ago, and it's again falling apart. So they just don't bind books the way they used to. So that would be one of my favorite children's or picture book. Favorite chapter or big kid book? I don't know. I mean, a lot of these could be like Heidi or Swiss Family Robinson. Yeah, I'm not sure. Was there, I don't know. I'd have to pick one of these. Oh, I forgot. I forgot some books in here. I'm not organized. Okay, here we go. Yes, okay. I in this category, I will say I love Noelle's, I don't know how you say it, Straightfield. I loved her books. And so there's a little copy. And I went through a period where I read almost everything Zilpha Keatley Snyder wrote. I just loved her books. So I guess those could be favorite kind of big kid books. And then favorite children's series, and I'm just going to go with the Little House series, which I talked about before. Oh my goodness, 25 minutes I've been talking about. I could go on and say a lot more about each of these books. So this was a wonderful tag to do. I love nostalgia. I love, looking back at these old vintage books and remembering reading them in my childhood. And so this was a really delightful tag. If you want to do this tag, feel free to. You are officially tagged. And I guess I'll wind it up here. And I hope you're doing well and happy. There it is, the bumper book. So let's see if I can open it and show you. Like just really, really charming illustrations. And there's a wink and blink and a nod. And just all kinds of animal crackers. Here's one. Oh, my grandsons love this, The Nonsense Alphabet by Edward Lear. I loved it too as a kid. Yeah, so this is my most beloved. There we go. There's the Squirrel's Thanksgiving. That's what it is, and that's a Robert Louis Stevenson poem, The Swing. So yeah, I love this. This is my favorite picture book as a child.